You've entered Bookstorm with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Well, listeners and readers, we have been listening to what you've been sending us, and a lot of you have been telling us to read this phenomenal book called The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark. And guess what? We did. And Kristen and I agree with you. It is phenomenal. And we're thrilled to have Julie with us today. Let me tell you a little bit about her before we get started. She is a New York Times best-selling author. Her books have earned star reviews from Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, Library Journal. The New York Times called her book, The Last Flight, thoroughly absorbing. That book has been named as an Indie Next pick, a Library Reads pick, Best Book of 2020 by Amazon editors and Apple Books. Wow. Her debut novel, The Ones We Choose, has been optioned for television by Lionsgate. Very impressive, Julie.
Yeah.
She lives in Los Angeles with her 2 sons and a golden doodle, and I love this, with poor impulse control. Welcome. So happy to have you on Bookstorm.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, Julie, we like to give the listeners a little bit of the background of the book. So if you'll allow me, I'll just kind of give a short summary. I will not give away spoilers, which is so difficult in this book because there's so many things I didn't even see coming. But The Lies I Tell is a twisted con woman thriller about 2 women who are threading the line between justice and revenge, topics that we love to talk about here in Bookstorm. We follow 2 women, Meg Williams, who also goes by Maggie Littleton, Melody Wild. These are different names for the same person, depending on the town and depending on the job. She basically can erase herself, be who you need her to be, and she assumes a number of personas in the book, and nothing about her is real. She comes alongside people and tells them what they need to hear. And by the time she's done, they have probably lost everything. Our other character that we follow is Kat Roberts. She has been waiting 10 years for the woman who she believes upended her life. And this woman has surfaced, Meg. She wants to be the one to expose her. But as the 2 women grow closer, as Kat gets to know her better, some of her long-held assumptions begin to crumble. And it really leaves Kat wondering who the target really is. This book, one of the things that I just loved is it really explores not only the deep psyche of these women and some of their marks, but also this idea of justice and revenge. Would you want to add anything at all, Julie, to our little summary?
No, I mean, that's a really great retelling. Yeah, it's a story about 2 women who are both bent on revenge and getting justice for things that they perceive other people have done to them. And they're tired of waiting for sort of karma to come along and balance the scales. And so they each decide to take matters into their own hands.
Excellent. Well, Julie, if you're ready, Chris, we
Yeah.
are ready to enter the storm.
Yeah, we sure are. We can't wait to dive down deep into this book. For our listeners who have not read it yet, I have to tell you, Julie, this is a masterfully drawn map into the mind of a con artist. Meg, our protagonist, chooses her targets very carefully. She says emotional people take risks. They don't think clearly. They're eager to believe whatever fantasy feeds them. But what do you believe were the attributes of Meg that causes these victims to fall so seemingly easily? And are these the same things we should all be leery of in the real world?
I did a lot of research into kind of the psychology of con artists and also the psychology of the people who get taken by them. And one of the things that I learned is that con artists really do target people who are at a crossroads of some kind, not only because they're distracted by the problems and decisions that they have to make, but because they're super emotional. And, you know, I think when we're emotional and stressed and worried about things, we don't always think clearly, and we don't always see people for who they really are. But also con artists are very, very dynamic and exciting and engaging. And, you know, if you listen to any of like, there's a great podcast called Queen of the Con, about female con artists in particular. I think there's only 2 seasons. And in both of those situations, the women who are conning people in their lives, the people who are being conned often either don't want to believe it because they love that person so much, or they almost, it's just so exciting to be around them that they don't really want to see them clearly. So I don't think that people in general in society need to be, you know, wary of every new person that comes into their life. I really don't think that's a good way to live. But I do think that, you know, Meg in particular has a very specific type of target that she's looking for. And she uses all of the tools at her fingertips to, you know, infiltrate their lives and befriend people in their inner circles so that she can approach her target kind of from the side rather than straight head on, which gives her a little bit of grace as far as allowing them to believe that she is somebody that they can trust.
I could tell that you did a lot of research into the mind of a con artist because the reader learns something about that personality type. We walk with her, watch her choose her victims. And I loved this part in your book where she would say, I know what they want to hear. I have figured out what they need and what they want, and I'm going to pretend to give that to them.
Yeah.
That just was mind-boggling for me. And I thought, the victim, like you just said, wants to believe the fantasy so bad that they play right into it. It was really, and that was just very interesting. Really phenomenal.
Yeah, and con artists will do that. They will figure out, they will befriend you. They will be the hero who steps in for, you know, the loan of money that you desperately need, or, you know, you can use my car while yours is in the shop. I mean, they're all too eager to be sort of your savior so that you perceive them as somebody who you can trust. And what they're actually doing is they're getting close enough to you so that they can figure out what it is you really, really, really need and really want. And then they're going to figure out a way to convince you that they're the only person who can give that to you.
And do you believe, because I felt this in the character Meg, and let me say to the reader, yes, she's a con artist, and I can't give away any clues, but she has a hurtful past.
Yeah.
And you really become to root for her. You really empathize with her and you begin to root for her. But I also felt that she was extremely intelligent. Is this a characteristic of a con artist as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think in order to manage all of the lies that con artists tell, they have to be highly, highly intelligent. And yes, I wanted to write a morally gray character that you root for, that the reader would know what they're doing is wrong and understand sort of the backstory for how they got to be in that position and want her to succeed anyway. I do not think that real life con artists are like Meg. Like, I just don't think, I wish that they were, but they're not. And so, you know, I do want to say, like, this is not based on any real life person or any real life con artist, because most con artists, in fact, probably all con artists are like sociopaths, right? And Meg is not a sociopath. Meg was sort of set on this path, not by choice, but by circumstance. And so she has also learned, though, that she's very, very good at it. And so she's kind of using her skills for good instead of for evil, which is why you might want to root for her, even though what she's doing is wrong.
Mm-hmm. We loved her. I love that character. Just loved her.
There's another theme that runs through this fantastic novel relating to blame and accountability. One of the female characters blames another person for a small role that she had in placing her in harm's way. But the assailant was really the true criminal there. And it took a while for this character to kind of see that accountability starts with the wrongdoer. And I was wondering if you could comment on the fact that we often place blame on those closest to us, people in our path, where we are really mad at somebody else or something else. And I was just thinking that it seems to me a common human characteristic.
I think so. I mean, like, I know children are that way, right? They save their worst, behaviors for the people they trust the most, right? But I think that it's typical, and I think especially in a world where, when you can't really have access to the person who's really at fault, you're going to blame the next best person in line, So I think that my character definitely knows that she's misguided. I think she's self-aware enough to know that, like, her anger and her rage is misplaced, but it's all sort of, when you have a trauma, it all gets very much wrapped up in a tight knot where you can't really see the beginning and the end of the string. And so you just kind of grab onto whatever piece you can. And in this case, it's sort of the person who set her on that path versus the person who actually did the harm.
Yeah, I think that underlies the principle of hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And sometimes that underlying hurt has nothing to do with the people that are being hurt in a marriage, for example, or in a relationship.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, she was. We loved this character. We love the character Kat also. Just love the naivety of Kat, but the good intention of Kat. I can't give any more. It's just such a great book that I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But also, this character, Meg, she is an antagonist and also a protagonist.
Definitely.
And I think the very best antagonist, or let me say for the reader who doesn't know, the very best bad guy has a little good guy in them. Even the worst bad guy has something redeemable, some redeemable quality or some little sliver that makes us love them and be able to hate along with them. I just love that character. You showed us into the heart of Meg when she says, and I want to quote, "I learned the worst can happen and I'll still be okay."
Yeah.
Life is filled with lessons. We can either choose to suffer from them or learn from them. But Meg takes it one step further. She takes justice into her own hands and revenge with it. As the reader, this is something we all wish we could do in the real world.
I know.
But we're unable to. So we took a secret thrill in all of this and a joy. But Meg's life then becomes a little lost within her obsession for justice and revenge. And I was going to ask you, as you wove this character together, what had to happen for Meg and for all of us? What has to happen for us to be able to leave the past behind, to not seek justice and revenge? And then I thought, which is more powerful and satisfying, revenge or maybe the ability to forgive and walk away?
That's a hard question. And I think it's also a really personal question. And I think that it's something that, you can say, and people who have been hurt and people who have been traumatized and people who really desperately need to see some kind of consequences for other people's actions aren't ready to accept that until they're ready to accept it. Right. And so for Meg, it's many, many, many years. She thinks she's actually going out into the world and doing good deeds and good works on behalf of other people who have been hurt like her. And she is, I don't think that there is anybody, who reads the book who feels that she shouldn't have been doing, that the people that she target didn't actually deserve it in a very specific and real way. And that's what you said makes her character so satisfying, and how we, a lot of people have messaged me and said, like, I really wish that Meg Williams was real, but, I think that as far as, the moment when you decide that you've had enough of carrying around the anger, I think it's really personal and it's different for everybody, and everybody gets there, hopefully in their own time and space, because there is a definite sense of peace when you're able to set whatever hurt down and walk away from it, knowing that you're really saving yourself more than that other person. Because bad people are going to go out and keep doing bad things. And, eventually that will catch up with them. Thankfully, Meg is there to write the skills, at least in fiction.
Yeah, she was the modern day Robin Hood for our readers. And you made every person that she conned, you set the backstory in such a way that we wanted her to get him.
Yeah.
For whatever it was. There was even something having to do with children that really tugs at your heart. And so we're like, yes, do it. Get in there and get back at him. And we rejoiced with all of it. It was really
Yeah.
fun. And I think you're right what you just said. So sometimes in life, we can take justice through the legal system. Sometimes we can't. We have to trust what comes around goes around, or karma. But when those things don't even work and we can't take it in our own hands, we have no power, I guess then maybe we're just left with, we have no choice but to, in our own minds, find some kind of forgiveness, or maybe not forgiveness, maybe just be able to walk away and continue living our lives. It's a
Right.
tricky thing, but you're right. It's very personal.
Yeah.
Very personal.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes some people a long time to get there, and some people never get there, and no judgment on people who don't. Um, like, and a lot of it depends on what was actually done to you,
Absolutely. And we're very big believers here in not judging unless
No.
you walk in someone else's shoes from the minute they were born and had
Yeah.
everything said and done to them. We have
Mhm.
no idea that we wouldn't react in the exact same way. We really can't know that. It's
That's
a great story.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too, because if you don't make some peace with these events or these traumas, they tend to define your life. And
Mhm.
especially for some of these characters, certain things started to define them for a period of time.
Mhm. Yeah. And so there's definitely a sense of freedom in making the decision not to let it define you anymore. And the way that Kat and Meg both go about doing that maybe isn't the healthiest way to go about doing it. But, my goal as a writer isn't necessarily to write characters who are doing healthy, normal things. Like, that doesn't make for good fiction. So, the fact that they are maybe going about it in a way that you or I wouldn't do, that's why we read fiction, is so that we can experience things and live inside the worlds of people who are making decisions that we wouldn't either have the courage to make, or perhaps we have the sensibility not to make, but it sure is fun to watch other people do it.
Oh, absolutely. I think you nailed it right there. Um, One of the characters has a knack for finding a person's point of emotional weakness, like we have been talking about, and exploiting that. For example, she learns that one person believes that a wrong is only a wrong if you get caught. And so that's kind of her springboard. And I
Yeah.
was wondering, yeah, it's fascinating how she zeroes in on it. And I was wondering, how important do you think that ability is to assess people and their vulnerabilities, even for good reasons?
I think really important. I mean, especially if you're going to steal from them, you need to know your entry point, right? I think though, I think that reading people is something we all do. Um, and we read tone of voice, we read facial expression, we read body language, but to get somebody to trust you enough to say something like it's only wrong if you get caught, that's sort of, for a con artist like Meg, that's like, a gift on a platter. That's like saying, here, let me serve myself up to you, do with me what you will, because she's definitely going to take that and run with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It really made me think in terms of, disclosure. And as we get to know people, some of the things we're sharing, we don't realize we're sharing some of our deepest fears and deepest concerns.
Yes, and I do think though that Meg targets people who, powerful men are a big target for her. And one of the things that she leans really hard into is the fact that powerful men often underestimate women, and especially women in careers that Meg is inhabiting. I should say, I wouldn't actually call her, although she is an actual true real estate. She does get her license for the purpose of pulling her final con. Um, but I think powerful men view women as sort of like people who background noise, people who can serve their interests when it suits them, and that who know to take a back seat when the real expert is speaking. And Meg leans into that, and she chooses careers like life coach, decorator, professional home decorator, that men who are in powerful positions might look down upon and think like, it's just not somebody, she must not be very smart then. Whereas in fact, Meg is actually much, much smarter than most of the men that she cons.
Excellent.
And I love the theme. That was an underlying theme in this novel that I loved, and all women readers are going to love, because even in today's modern day, I still believe that women are a minority. And especially in business and professional fields, we are women, we've experienced this. I think we're ebbing out of it. This is what I hope. But
Yeah.
when this happened in the book, we couldn't somehow, a little bit of us, just be like, yes, she's so much smarter than him. Look at her intellect and her planning and even her deviousness. We just loved every ounce of it. You
Yeah.
created a phenomenal character there. For anyone listening, you absolutely do not want to miss this book, The Lies We Tell by Julie Clark. And Julie, can you give us a glimpse? What's on your radar? What are you working on now?
I'm working on a book about a family with a big secret, and it's about a woman who goes home. Her father, who is a very famous horror author, is dying, and she goes home to help, but also to write his sort of life story, because he is not only famous for being a horror author, he also has been long believed to have been responsible for the murderer of his siblings in 1975, a horrific murder that happened in a small town, and has, gone on to, great literary success with a huge shadow over him. And so she's going to go home and get the truth about what really happened.
Wow. This sounds like more women empowerment a little bit here with the female coming in and solving the murder and getting to the bottom of this. This sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I'm always going to write about strong, smart women. I'm never going to put, I like writing unreliable characters for sure. And I definitely, I mean, I would say that Meg is an unreliable narrator. You're never really sure what she says is true or how much of it is true, but I'm only going to write unreliable female narrators who are unreliable for a very specific reason. There's a reason why they don't want you to know everything or why they're lying. And it's not because they're mentally unstable or, having a crisis, or, they're very deliberate in their unreliability. And that's sort of a goal of mine as a woman, as a mother, as a teacher. I feel a responsibility on how we portray women on the page, in a world where women are constantly trying to be taken seriously, not considered hysterical, too emotional, like all of those things. Like, I'm just not going to write women that way.
Mm-hmm. We're so appreciative of that. We absolutely adored this book. I want to say to our listeners, you not only are going to want to read this book, The Lies We Tell, but you want to connect with Julie Clark. You can find her on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And it has been an absolute pleasure reading this book this summer. A joy, a totally entertaining, but extremely meaningful and life-changing. Thank you,
Wow.
Julie, so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys so much for having me. It was great talking to you.
Pleasure
as well.
having you. Many big topics in this book, Kristen. We talked about it for about an hour before we even went live with Julie, but I am telling you, this notion of men taking advantage of women, and I wondered if she was going to bring that theme up because it hit me very subtly but strongly. Did you sense this as well?
Oh, definitely. In fact, we've seen that theme in a couple of the books that we have been looking at recently. And it's been very interesting to me because we see them in the role of oppressed and oppressor. And sometimes it gets a little uncomfortable. Like, are we going to take justice into our own hands because of a perceived injustice? Or is it something specific to that person? Or is it men generally? And I think that's a discussion that is worth having.
Mm-hmm. It is.
What do you think?
Well, I know that this hit you strongly as a lawyer, this idea of taking justice into your own hands. And so, yes, it's fiction and it's fantasy, but there is a huge satisfaction in this notion of Robin Hood justice. But I think you just touched upon something. When you're angry at a person, do not loop that person in with an entire group, an entire nationality, an entire working class, an entire career class. Make sure that we realize that is one person. It doesn't represent the whole group. Is that what you're getting at there a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's a very important aspect. And also the idea you just raised, and that is when we talk about revenge, there's a lot of bad things that come along with that. There's a sense of chaos. There's a sense of you're acting outside of the established system that we have for restoring justice. And when you do that, I mean, think about it. People are fallible. They might act on wrong information. They act on perceptions that are not accurate. There may be bystanders who are hurt in the process. You know, I always think about the mafia, for example, as having their own code of justice. But look at the fallout that came alongside of them meting out justice in the way they saw fit. There were lots of people who were innocent who were hurt in the process.
And when you take justice into your own hands, you may not have all the facts, like you're saying. You're not the judge and the jury, and you don't know what came. I'm more of the kind of person, honestly, I'm a huge forgiver, and I'm really, really good at letting go of things and walking away and moving forward from things. And I'm always for the underdog. And if anyone is ever angry with me, if you came to my front door and knocked on the door and said, hey, let's make amends, I'd be like, come in and have a coffee. I'm very much a lover of peace. I really am a lover of peace. So that's more my take, but that's just me. I haven't had an atrocity done, though, to my family. So let me just say, I'm talking about the normal things in life here, not a true crime.
Yeah, absolutely. And I struggle with that because even just in the work that I do, there are certain industries that as a whole, I have put in my mind as they have made a lot of wrong choices. And I hope the justice system deals with them. And I always think in my mind, well, what if the justice system doesn't? I would never step outside of the established system, but we're reading about characters who did and who do. Fascinating.
And I wanted to say this to Julie, and I forgot. I felt like, was even the reader being conned by Meg? Because she started out, and Julie set this out, making us love her, feel sorry for her, hitting something in us, a need that even the reader didn't know we had, excuse me, with the characters that she came after. We could relate to the con artist, and we could relate to the person being conned, until we even started to fall for her, started to grew to love her and empathize with her to the point where whatever she did, it's good, do it. Go do your thing. We're rooting for you. Julie Clark is a very intellectual, intelligent writer to be able to weave the reader into this story to the point where we're feeling all these emotions.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Just loved it. So I'm just going to say thank you, everyone. I have to tell you about our summer lineup because these books are coming in here quicker than possible. First, thanks to Mark Carey, our incredible, talented sound engineer, because we wouldn't have a summer lineup if it wasn't for this guy, producer and sound engineer.
Hope you guys enjoyed the show, and see you again next week.
And of course, we did, every one of us, because of these fantastic authors as well. Here's who we have coming up. You can read ahead. Some you can't, because we're thrilled to have received the advanced reader's copy. We have Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen with The Golden Couple. We have Karen Slaughter and Girl Forgotten. Lori Lico Albanese and Hester. Ellen Marie Wiseman, The Lost Girls of Willowbrook. Jamie Brenner, Guilt. Brendan Slocum, The Violin Conspiracy. Viola Shipman, The Edge of Summer. Alka Joshi, The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. And Karen Unger, Secluded Cabin, Sleep 6.
In the meantime, listeners, stay on the radar with Bookstorm by visiting our website at bookstormpodcast.com, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and if you'd like to see us in person, or better yet, one of our authors, visit us on our YouTube channel. Until next time, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep with some life-changing fiction.